Ever wonder what everyone's doing on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. They're saving, planning, and budgeting all before dessert.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
Well, good afternoon. Is everyone still awake, listening? It's great to be here, and great to be here with you, Josh.
Yeah.
So you know what? I was actually thinking before I came out how time flies. I remember speaking at this conference shortly after Ford purchased Michigan Central. And you know, that was when Bill laid out this incredible, ambitious vision to create something that was truly unique for the region. And you know, when he announced that back in 2018, the opportunity to create an innovation corridor from Detroit to Ann Arbor and beyond was something that he could see. He understood that we had incredible assets in Michigan, and we just needed to be smart about how we brought them all together. He also was traveling to Silicon Valley, he was traveling to Texas. I had the opportunity to travel with him, and it was very clear that he didn't want us to be working in isolated ways, that he wanted to create something where we could all come together to solve problems. And in the end, what he really wanted was for Michigan to win from an economic standpoint and an innovation standpoint. So, you know, when I look back and I came to speak here, I remember I got up and it was literally all on paper. It was a vision. None of it was real yet. We were trying to create a world-class destination, an innovation hub, and I had to constantly say this was not going to be a Ford headquarters, right? That this was going to be something super innovative, and it was going to be an open platform where we were inviting others to help us solve large-scale problems and really evolve the needs to drive all forms of mobility. That's kind of our superpower. So of course, there was the added challenge of the buildings and the renovation, and of course they were abandoned for 30 years, and that story's been told. And it was daunting, and I just always have to give a shout out to the construction workers and the skilled trades who brought these buildings back from the dead, bottom line, because it was incredible. But what I have to say is during that time, we did not wait for the buildings to be completed. You know, we came together, we started benchmarking other cities, we traveled. Carolina Plazinski, who spoke earlier, we were like the two musketeers going all over the country. We went to Cornell Tech, which Josh worked on, and really started to see that, you know, it was really important that we get that up and running. And so we forged our partnership with New Lab very early on, and we began to do some pilots. And what we really learned was there was no one integrating the pieces together like we were hoping to do here. And we had a real opportunity. And similar to what Sandy said this morning, we wanted to bring together the public, private, startup, and philanthropic sectors to really come together and solve problems. So here we are. We have 2 major restorations under our belt. We have the book depository that's been opened for a couple of years, and of course we had the big celebration over the summer on the station, which really put another incredible spotlight on Detroit, as many other wonderful things happened in 2024. But now we have this 30-acre campus, and what was very clear to me was that this was a huge, daunting task. And so 3 years into it, we started to look for someone who could run it, and someone who really had a unique set of skills, who had really thought about innovation, real estate, placemaking, how do you think about equity? After all, we were going into the oldest neighborhood in Detroit, and so it was really important that we went into the community in the right way. And I scoured the country. Carolina and I interviewed a lot of people, and we landed on Josh, who was amazing because he had this skill set. He had started Google Sidewalk Labs, he had started Cornell Tech, he had done a ton of different economic development projects in the city of New York with Mayor Bloomberg, and so we were really fortunate to get him. And so I'm really happy that he's here, and we're just gonna have a conversation because, frankly, we've taken that vision and now we live it on a daily basis. We are actually trying to implement what we've all been talking about here this morning. And so, Josh, with that, I'd love to sort of turn to you and say, you know, why do you think Michigan Central is different, and what do you think the opportunity is there?
Well, first, thank you, Mary. And I have to say, coming in 3 years ago, the effort that Mary and Carolina, who's out there somewhere, and Bill made is truly heroic. To see something like this, because there is no model for this. And you know, it's interesting, I think a lot of people will find sometimes it's hard for us to figure out how do we actually describe what Michigan Central is, because it's many things. and it's completely unusual. So if you step back, you say, where else is there an example of a corporate investment at a scale like that to catalyze an open platform? And I know we always use the term open platform. People are like, what the hell does that mean? It literally means it's a platform for everybody. And that when you think about universities, it's sort of clear there's a mission to it. You understand the purpose and all the pieces that fit it. You think about government-led economic development and investment in things, and it sort of makes sense. Here we have this model where this corporate investment is created to catalyze economic development. And there simply is no model literally in the world for that. So, we talk about Michigan Central as a tech and culture hub, and that's not by accident. You'll notice we don't talk a lot about innovation district. We don't talk about just technology. Everything that everybody has said all day, from the investment in the conditions to enable innovation, all the way through to what Doug was talking about, community and connections, is the essence of what's happening at Michigan Central. And so that to me is that's also that secret sauce, that special power of unleashing that. And frankly, sometimes we don't know what the next pieces are and how do we keep building on that. But what's been amazing is over the last few years, Mary, as you described, the momentum has just started to really build on itself. And so, part of it is deep intentionality, and part of it is watching this thing organically grow into a powerful force unto itself.
Well, I think that's right. I remember when we would travel, we would see pieces of something that was really great, but nothing, nowhere had sort of brought it all together. So let's talk a little bit about the book depository, which was one of the first buildings to open. It's been open for a couple of years. I love going and working there because, honestly, you meet someone in the line getting a coffee, and before you know it, you're kind of collaborating on something cool. But there are 133 startups there now.
I think it's 135 as of
So they're growing. Like every day, the number changes. So what are they working on there, and sort of how do you see the value proposition for them? And what do you think it tells us about innovation in the city and in the region?
Yeah. So they're working on really an incredible array of things. There's a ton around the implications of electrification, so the expansion of the capability to apply electrification to whether it's mobility or other uses. There's a ton, Santa and others talked about AI, there's a ton about applied AI and how do you use AI as a tool. And one of my favorites, there's a company who's using AI to literally map the seafloor. And it's a good example of where, where the scope of work reaches well beyond just the sort of traditional mobility definitions. We see a lot around, we use a lot of jargon, so forgive me, we see a lot around advanced aerial, for example. Michael Helander just spoke. What his company's doing is amazing. What I love about Michigan Central is that Michael's company is one piece of a bigger puzzle where we have an agreement with the state, that we have a radius around us where we can do what's called out of line of sight testing of the use of drones in an urban context. There is nowhere in the country where you can do that. Huge shout out to Carolina Plazinski to have the vision and capability to create that. We just recently had our first FAA approval. Every pilot has to, every test has to have an approval from the FAA. It's a massive, one little thing that's a massive step forward for us. But so we see a ton of other companies now starting to also in the advanced aerial. A lot that really actually ladders up to climate at the end of the day. A lot of climate tech, clean tech, a lot of alternative energy, and also the further development of batteries and the use and effectiveness of batteries. I love it also, we see a lot around material sciences, even the occasional company that's veering into the life sciences. We have a company who's monitoring how plants communicate with each other. I'm not sure where it goes, but I do like to see all the wires across the plants. But really, it's what they're doing is really in many ways the state of the market in the world for mobility, for the application of AI and things like that. I think if you look at what we've learned from the work that they're doing, I think we've learned that if you create the conditions, which I would emphasize includes this notion of developing a community around them, whether that's investors, whether that's other entrepreneurs, whether that's access to customers. If you sort of create those conditions for people to thrive, it can really work. And we're seeing companies who are already in New Lab at Michigan Central grow like crazy. In fact, one of the challenges for us is to work with everybody else figure out how do we make sure we keep them in Detroit and in the market as they grow. I think we're also learning what's needed. And it's interesting, in some ways it's maybe a sign of a first step towards maturity of the ecosystem that on more than one occasion now we've had to fend off aggressive investors who are coming after our companies. We feel very proprietary about our
But in other
family.
states, right?
In other states,
I mean, that's the concern.
Other states
right?
and other markets. And so, we're learning. We know, I agree with everything Doug said, community is essential. There's so many different folks from Michigan Central today. Here, I bet every one of them, I think Darren's speaking a little bit after us, I think every one of them would emphasize that probably the most important thing is the community, but we still do need access to capital. Doug's slides about the flight of folks who are growing and scaling is really stark, and we're not competitive on investment capital in the market here, and we need to work on that. So we're learning different pieces. I think we're learning. We need more tools, and it's not just for Michigan Central; it's for everybody. To really for those early stage companies, and at that step when you start to get Series A and there's the potential to start really expanding. We need more tools to do that. We need scale-up infrastructure across the state. We see a ton of companies now who would love to have access to wet labs, for example, and that's not something we can offer, but we'd love to work with others in the ecosystem, and just as an example. So we're really learning a ton about what those needs are. We're also, by the way, I think it's important to mention, for us, it's not just the work they're doing, it's who's doing the work. And Johnny and Alexa spoke about what they've been able to grow with Black Tech Saturdays. It's been extraordinary, and we've been able to work with them to really partner and transition. They're transitioning from not just a convener and an extraordinary one at that, but an accelerator too. And so wherever we can, we're seeing what are the ways that we can keep building the community.
Well, and I think too, you mentioned infrastructure, and I remember in the early days it was really important for some of these startups, to get some help with expedited permitting. And I want to thank the city and the city council because, what was happening was some of these startups would try to get a permit to test something, and it would take 6 months, 8 months, and by then, they sort of were going under. And so having that innovation district designation, I think is really important. And of course, the first electrified road, which is super cool. We don't nowhere in the country has that, and so there's inductive charging in the pavement. So these are all really exciting, I think, innovations that not only whether they scale or not, bring a lot of attention.
Yes.
And we've seen that, right? There have been tons of people who come. We had Ted at the book. So you see a lot of convening happening as well. And so as you think about all the people that have come into Michigan Central, how do you see Michigan Central positioning itself sort of in the future, especially as we talk about the importance of partnerships, making sure we're not all reinventing the same wheel, right? But that we're leveraging each other's assets.
Yeah, I think one of the themes that's emerged for us is Michigan Central as an anchor institution. I think traditionally people think of the three institutions that were up here before us as anchor institutions. But I think that's what we're becoming. And so if you look at the convening, we've literally had thousands of people in the 19, 20 months since in First Book and then the station, we're able to do that. And it's an incredible cross-section of from hyperlocal to global, and a bunch of different things happening all the time, and you never know who you're going to see and what's going to happen. And one of the things I love is you ask folks who are working at New Lab at Michigan Central or otherwise with us, and everybody has a story of somebody they ran into, somebody they met, how that led to further opportunity in another piece. And so this whole, there's lots of talk about creative collisions and kind of accidental collaborations, and it's kind of the essence of what's happening there. And I think because of that, I think partially we've unleashed the want and need for that. And so, and partially the way we've tried to set up literally the physical space to accommodate that and encourage that and facilitate that. The other part is for us, it's great to have, the more people we can have, the better, whether they're there for an hour, they're there for a year. We want it to be this venue that everybody feels like I can go and be a part of that community and access what's happening. And then lastly, Mary, I would say as an anchor institution, I think, I have a lot of thoughts about how Detroit's becoming positioned relative to, conversations around whether it's the Ann Arbor, Detroit corridor that, you and Bill were talking about even years ago. I think that we're contributing to, as that anchor institution, to Detroit's ability to be at the table and to really sort of not just be other things that are happening elsewhere should also happen in Detroit, but literally there's something profound and powerful happening in Detroit. I don't mean to imply in any way it's only Michigan Central, but I think there's something about the scale of what we're doing, the model of what we're doing, the physical assets, the station is such a iconic symbol in its symbolism of looking ahead. I think it gives us a seat at the table to help drive collaboration and bigger thinking around the region, around the state, that I hope over time is really powerful.
Yeah, and I think, it's funny because at the beginning, I think everyone was so excited about the station because, of course, it had been shuttered for so many years. I was very excited about the building next door. Backstory is that, early days when we were doing the Community Benefits Ordinance Agreement, we were actually going to tear that building down. And, we were also going to put a parking structure on the back of the station. And the community was very vocal, and rightly so, in saying, well, we don't want to look at a parking deck. So for those of you who come visit, that's the reason you're parking in the mobility hub and you're walking. It's good to walk.
But we call that building our secret weapon, because people do always think that the association is with the station for all the obvious reasons. But when people for the first time come into the book depository building, there's this incredible moment where they say, like, I had no idea this existed and this was happening. And by the way, I think all the work we're talking about, I'm convinced there's some secret special something that's happening because it's happening in these buildings that have this history and have that something deeper to them. Not to say as we hopefully grow and expand and there's more buildings, it won't be amazing. But as a starting point, it sort of speaks so powerfully to the notion of picking up from the past, but really sort of embracing the future.
Well, and I think, anybody who was able to come to the opening of the train station could see that power of the emotion, the connection. I mean, people would literally cry when they would walk through the doors to see the Grand Hall. And so there is this wonderful connection. But what was great was people are coming from other global destinations going, wow, who knew this was here? So can you speak a little bit about, we talked about the book, there's so many startups, that in my opinion is sort of the engine, the catalyst of the innovation. How do you see the train station fitting in and the rest of the ecosystem at Michigan Central?
If you step back, for what we're trying to do, there's sort of two primary objectives. One is to really grow and nurture a world-leading ecosystem around innovation and the growth economy. The second is to create a unique and special destination worthy of those physical buildings and worthy of the responsibility I think we all feel to make them extraordinary and major contributors to civic impact and civic growth. And those two things need each other. We need to create a place that people want to be and is vibrant and alive, and we need to have the economic engine that's sort of driving over. The station allows us to scale a lot of the things we're doing. So obviously we can convene in a lot of ways. We have big spaces. We can get a lot of people. But it really is, it creates an incredible experience. But it's also part of the innovation ecosystem. So, people may have heard me say it. I love that for all of us, the first people working in the tower of that building again since I think 1981 were Detroit high school students as part of Google's CodeNext program, and learning not just technical skills, but literally how do you apply that to innovation capabilities and competency? How do you apply that to real problem solving? We've got forward occupancy where there's business units who, for what they do, it's the electrification or some of the software interface, for what they do, they need and want to be part of a community that's thinking about future capabilities and how to apply technology in new and powerful ways. We are close on our path forward on having a hotel and hospitality. We want people to be able to come and stay. The building is so special. That should be part of it. Over time, many of you may have come. We have these moments we create of programming also. We've had, at this point, over 200, I think it's closer to 230,000 people coming through.
That's incredible.
We're working towards opening it to sort of be open to the public all the time. We had our first Sunday. We had almost 1,000 people show up on a cold Sunday in January. So we want it to become this alive place that everybody feels a sense of ownership of and is welcome.
Well, and I think this morning I told Sandy that he actually had a great slide where he showed the power of bringing together you know, public, private, startups, philanthropy, and that was really always the vision, right? You
Yes.
spoke about Google Code Next and the youth program, and so that's the community that's starting to be built there, right?
Yes.
It's not just startups,
No.
it's not just Ford. Ford has 3 floors at the station currently, but it's really a combination of all of this to
Yes.
create this very interesting community.
That's right, and you know, we also have philanthropic funding to build a program around the intersection of art and technology. And we really view art and artists as much innovators as the technologists. And so the goal is exactly as you described, Mary, to create a place where we break down boundaries. There are no boundaries across sectors. Whoever you are, whatever you do, there's a relationship to it and a role that it can play in advancing what you need to do.
Well, and I think, you know, today, if nothing else, I mean, even compared to when I came here, what, 5 years ago, to talk initially about Michigan Central, there is so much that's happening that's so exciting, right? I mean, we have to acknowledge that. It's incredible. And it's, you know, really exciting to see the meaningful momentum. I love that the spotlight's on Detroit. You know, it's been a really great year. 2024 was a really great year, the Lions aside, which was also amazing. But how do we collectively leverage this and maximize this opportunity? Because I do feel like we're at this kind of cusp of this incredible opportunity. There's still work to be done, and it's hard work.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mary. And I think Richard before us referred to an inflection point. And you know, I'm of the school of thought that this is an incredibly important moment, and those don't come often. And where the momentum, as you say, the investment happening in multiple places, the mindset, the collaboration that people are talking about it's unique. And you know, maybe it's as somebody who's from elsewhere and now here, the shift in the narrative on a national and international scale is profound. And to me, it's now we have to be full steam ahead and take full advantage of this moment. I think there's a few things. I think one, I think somebody said before, we have a whole bunch of the ingredients. And we need the recipe. We need a clear vision and strategy that everybody feeds into. And I think personally that that's at a state level. I think that any division between different parts of the state is actually artificial. I think we all need each other. I think secondly, collaboration is critical, and not just in the convening sense, but literally in the where are the projects we can do together, how can we be smart about where something one entity, one place, one strategy is doing, how can that complement others? Mm-hmm. And you know, it's interesting, I will be, in all honesty, I do find that sometimes we hit up against a little bit of a scarcity mindset and a little bit of a zero-sum game kind of mindset. And I think collectively we have to figure out what's that strategy, what are the tools we all need. We have some, what Governor Whitmer just signed at Michigan Central is amazing and super helpful. We need more things for all of us. And I think we all need to be working together in really, really smart ways. I think one of the things I love about what I see happening, is that I think in some ways a new competitive advantage for Detroit is emerging. And as part of that, people are understanding that a vibrant, growing, healthy Detroit is critical for a vibrant, healthy, growing Ann Arbor, a region, the state, all of those things. And at the end of the day, we all have to be, in my view, maniacally focused on driving economic growth and keeping people here. Again, Doug or somebody was talking about, Santa and all the presidents are net exporters. We have to be aggressive about how we work together and exploit this moment to the maximum.
Well, we're out of time. I want to thank you for the conversation.
Thank
and
you.
I just want to personally thank many of you in this room who've been incredible collaborators and partners on Michigan Central. I know together, just given all the exciting things that are happening, we're going to do fantastic things together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ever wonder what everyone's doing on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. They're saving, planning, and budgeting all before dessert.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?